The European Space Agency has a long-lasting collaboration with the African continent, with institutions at local, regional and national level. We work on the promotion of the use of Earth observation data in the continent, with demonstration projects, with capacity building activities, training courses, but we also have a transfer of know-how and expertise. And we really try to enhance easy access, fast access to data and products for the communities in the African region. We worked in support of the GMES Africa initiative, which is one led by the European Commission, where we foster the use and enhancement of data access by African communities to the Copernicus data. We now are initiating the next step of a European Union partnership on Africa with DG IMPA, where we will promote partnerships and institutional arrangements, but we will also foster the increased participation of the commercial sector into this domain. And we will also work on projects related to everything that is disaster management, resilience, and everything that's related to climate change in Africa. So a lot of initiatives, a long-lasting partnership that will certainly be reinforced in the coming years with a lot of initiatives using the wealth of the EO data that we have in Europe, using the free and open data policy for the benefits and the collaboration with Africa entities. Climate change is a topic on which the European Space Agency is working since years, not just with the development of relevant space infrastructures, the Copernicus, the meteorological missions, but the Earth Explorer, the science mission, but also we're working on the support to the climate variables, which are the essential climate variables of the United Nations framework context that look at information and data relevant to sea level rise, but also deforestation, quality of the air, but also everything that is related to land degradation. All these topics are very relevant for the African continent. And not only the science work, which is done using the Earth observation data, is important to be shared with the African partners, but it's also important to have a very close collaboration in terms of understanding their needs, using at best the facilities available, for example, on ground truth validation at the level of the local regions in Africa, but also trying to have systems that make evolutive models. So evolutive model like the one that we are doing in terms of understanding how the continent would look like if there is an increase of temperature of 1 degree, if there is an evolution in terms of droughts or also reduction of river basins. The collaboration with Africa is for Europe certainly a primary goal, and for the European Space Agency as well, because on one side, this is the closest continent that we're working with. Not only, it's a continent on which we have a lot of synergies in terms of looking at how the country and the states evolve. We look at deforestation, and deforestation is certainly not just something relevant for Africa, but it's relevant for the world, and it's relevant for also CO2 emissions. It's relevant for the absorption of such CO2. So monitoring deforestation in Africa with the African partner is just an example of how relevant it is also for Europe. Another area where we are working very closely is the one on drought, is the one on the extension of the deserts. We're looking at food security. We're looking at how we can collaborate in terms of statistical efforts, in terms of methodologies efforts in the domain of agriculture. And food security is something that goes well beyond Europe. It goes also into the African continent in terms of collaboration, in terms of using the same methodologies, using the same statistical methods, and also assessing what you can do globally in terms of challenges, which are common challenges. So Europe and Africa are much closer than what we think. Europe and Africa can work really closely using data from satellites, Earth observation data, and the systems available.
Thank you very much for this question. In fact, we cannot talk about the priorities for the African Space Council now, because the Council has to meet and to work on it. But this being said, it is clear that based on our knowledge of the ecosystem, our understanding for the last 10 years, we know that the priorities in terms of EO will cover the 3 segments of the space: the ground segment, the space segment, and the streams. Ground segment, I'm talking about infrastructures to receive the data, to transfer the data, even the equipment to process the data. Secondly, the space segment, we do want to have some satellites dedicated to Africa, be constellation, be single satellite, but addressing African priorities. And the downstreams, these are the applications. And in different areas, agriculture, water, climate change impact, etc. But that will need a lot of collaboration. You know, the collaboration in space, it is mandatory by the nature of the subject itself, because space, it is made up of several things. Not only one individual, not only one country can do it. Therefore, we have to work together. That is a necessity. It is mandatory, as I said. Secondly, our collaboration with Europe, it is historical and it is even mandatory because we are the two closest continents. What happens in Europe affects Africa and vice versa. Therefore, from this space, we can look at global challenges together and also we can share experiences. Europeans can accompany Africans with their best practices, but the Africans also can come with institute data, with indigenous knowledge, and they can validate the space data. You see, together, we can work and address our own priorities and also global challenges like climate change, disaster reduction, etc., etc. In the African space policy and strategy, one thing is important, the mandate of the African Union, and the African Space Agency is an organ of the Union, is to coordinate the space activities in the continent. In the continent, we have some countries that are pioneers in space arena. There are the newcomers, they are finding their ways. The big chunk of African countries, they don't have space agencies, they don't have space institutions, but they are biggest users of space data. Therefore, the African Space Agency will make sure that all African citizens have access to space data, and more than that, they be able to use the analytical data or the result from the data analyzed by the expert. They can be able to use it for decision-making process. This is where the African Space Agency will stand, making sure that all Africans have access to data, product, and services for their own mandate.
Thank you very much. My name is Saleh Maman Bashir. I'm Senior Scientific Officer at African Union Commission. I'm now coordinating also the GMS and Africa program. Collaboration between Africa Union and the European Union Commission, it's one of our key pillar in terms of success story. So we are honestly counting on this cooperation. We are benefiting from what? From new technology. With EO4Africa, we are getting support in terms of the use of your technology, let's say like the using for cloud computing, and we are getting support in terms of organizing hackathon. And we are using also all the facilities provided by European Space Agency. So this is honestly, in terms of experience and good success story, it's benefiting from all the facility in terms of technology provided. We are using EO4Africa on many domains in Africa. First, in terms of capacity building for academia, we are training people on the specific use of Earth observation, in terms of monitoring environment, in terms of fisheries, in terms of farmers, in terms of monitoring inundation. So the EO4Africa, we are honestly strengthening the skill of Africa experts so that they can monitoring easily the environment. One simple example is the program I'm managing, the GMS and Africa program. The GMS Africa program, the objective is to use the EO capacity and to provide to end users all the benefit of Earth observation services. Our main strategy is based on the collaboration with EO4Africa, and at a large with European Space Agency, and at a very large with European Union Commission. We want to count on that collaboration so that we are sure that we can handle always the Africa users' need in terms of capacity building, in terms of strengthening institutional, in terms of using the EO services capacity. So we are really counting on the collaboration between Africa and the European. So that's really the strategy. Continue collaborating, and then based on the success story we are having, we are sure that GMS and Africa will be able to address all the Africa end users' needs.
My name is Tandikile Mvundula. I'm from Malawi and I'm the elected vice president of the Africa Space Council. Okay, now I think it's a great initiative. And I think for the Africa Space Council and the Africa Space Agency, it's going to be very exciting to be able to learn from the experiences of the European Space Agency. These will be the two global continental space agencies in the world. I don't think we have other continental space agencies like this. For the Africa Space Agency, there'll be a lot that we can learn from your experiences. But I believe that European space agencies will also learn something from our experiences, because we'll be dealing with a new evolving sector across 55 countries, which is very exciting. And I think the collaboration will sort of generate some really powerful opportunities for both agencies. I think the private sector has got a critical role to play in Earth observation across the continent. I know that it is playing a significant role here in Europe, but I think that it's an opportunity to utilize the very large skill base that we have. We have a very high percentage of young people across the continent, and it provides opportunities for them to get employment. But I also feel that there's an opportunity for new initiatives to come up, new products development in terms of AI, big data. There's new products and services that can be developed, and it will be critical for the private sector to play a role in that. But yeah, that'll be very important for both. And of course, the private sector in Africa can learn from experiences and work with the private sector in Europe. I think that's a given. I would expect them to, because the long-term sustainability of a sector cannot be borne by the space agency alone. And the private sector has got a critical role to play in it, whichever agency is involved in that. Yeah. Once again, I think it goes back to what I've just said, that it's work. I mean, for me, I see this opportunities for collaboration being established between both agencies and the contacts therein. For your more established companies in Europe, with companies that are evolving and some that have got quite a bit of experience on the continent. So I think there's a lot of opportunity for that. In terms of the specifics, I mean, I think that will evolve as we proceed. One of the things that I believe in terms of the capacity, the human capacity, which is a critical component of the space sector, is that as we work together as countries, we have thousands of young people who are learning skills in different space sciences, but they lack the opportunities to actually utilize and get employment. So that's why I'm saying it opens up new opportunities for that to happen. So human capacity is critical for the success of the sector. And the way I look at it, the skill set is not local to whichever country you come from. It's a global skill set. So that's where I believe that it's going to, both the European Space Agency, Africa Space Agency, and the world will benefit from this.
Well, actually, Egypt have a very special geographic location. So Egypt is located in Africa. It's part of the Middle East. It's part of the Mediterranean. So Egypt is entitled to lots of collaboration opportunities between Europe that's directed towards the Middle East or to Africa or to the Mediterranean region at large. So there are lots of opportunities that can be envisioned. And actually, Egypt have a very long collaboration history with Europe. So now we have more than maybe 5 or 6 satellites in space that have been built in collaboration with different European companies. And the history of collaboration between Egypt and Europe in space is very long in capacity building and in developing lots of facilities and in different sectors of space. Egypt, in general, is one of the first countries in Africa that launched communication satellites and broadcasting satellites. Those satellites were built in collaboration with different European companies, with Thales Alenia and others within the European continent. And actually, this started in late 90s, and it's still ongoing till now, because we have all the replacement versions of those geosatellites that have been done through collaboration with different European companies. And this proved to be very, very successful, actually. In addition, if we talk about the Egyptian Space Agency, we have lots of successful agreements that have been signed with several European countries. So we have an agreement with Italy, with France, with Portugal, with lots of other countries. So there are lots of different dimensions of collaboration between Egypt and Europe in the field of space at large and the field of Earth observation in specific. So there are lots of funds that have been shared between Egypt and Europe serving different Earth observation applications for agriculture, for water resource management, and others. Actually, there are lots of opportunities that we can foresee, and Egypt now is leading a new initiative through the Egyptian Space Agency for assigning a technology park. This technology park will allow foreign companies to come and to start their business. And we are looking forward to have lots of agreements with European companies to open subsidiaries in Egypt, where they will be entitled to lots of incentives once they are in Egypt. And the main objective for this is to have the localization of the satellite technology and the Earth observation satellite industry localized within Egypt in a win-win situation between Egypt and Europe. So that's how we foresee one part of the collaboration, and this will entail lots of capacity building and lots of other activities that can be done between Egypt and Europe.
I think that this is a new chapter in our long-standing NASA and ESA collaboration. ESA kindly invited us to join the organizing committee for EO4Africa conference and symposium here, and we were pleased to join that group. We have been learning so much about all of the work of our African colleagues here and our European colleagues, and sharing some of our work that we are doing with NASA as well. We have worked together with ESA, building satellites together. We have worked with ESA to share our data openly together and even to combine them through the harmonized Landsat Sentinel data series, for example. We have flown airborne campaigns across Africa, looking at, for example, with AFRISAR, synthetic aperture radar, looking at tree canopy. And so I see now this opportunity to work together with ESA and with our African colleagues towards developing applications and building capacities to either make the application or maybe skills to use the applications, and really enable all of us to harness the value of Earth observations for societal benefit. In my experience working with my African colleagues, I often realize that there are still some enabling infrastructure challenges. Sometimes the internet isn't good enough to be able to get the information from our satellites into the hands of users. Sometimes our users don't have a way to get the information at all. They're not with the right kind of smartphone to see the application. Sometimes we don't have enough compute, analytical capability to run the models, to predict the weather, to predict the changes in climate. And so I think there is definitely work still to be done to enable that infrastructure. I think there's also work to be done to build the skills and the workforce. I think the will is there. I think the youth, the engagement is so exciting, and it's so great to see here all of the great science being done. I think that getting the countries and the governments to really have ownership and agency to be able to use this information on their own with their needs in mind is really where we still need to work together. I think that the most important thing is to start with the needs that are being met with that capacity strengthening effort. Sometimes we have scientists who participate in our training program called RSET who want to learn a little bit about remote sensing, who already have basic skills. They want to learn how to use our newest satellite data, and they come to our RSAT online training. They take those classes, they participate in the homeworks and the question and answer, and they go off and use that information directly. That's all they needed, was just that specialized information that we offer through that training programs. Other times, it may be that there's a service that's not quite there. Maybe a flood prediction service isn't adequate in the country. So you really firstly need to listen and work together towards what really is the issue. What are the specifics? Is it the access to the data? Is it the fact that we don't understand the topography? Why is the information not being used? And then together with that partner, you begin to work together to develop that application, sometimes tailor something that already exists. Sometimes you need to create something new, bringing the local knowledge together with the satellite information. When you've done that kind of work together, and then you have time, and you have trust in that relationship, then you can begin to sustain that. And always along the way of that journey, you talk with those partners about how they might sustain it. And that's part of the listening at the beginning. If there's no high-end computing, there's no point in bringing a high-end computing solution. You have to work that longer term to find that resource. So what is a simpler solution that can meet that need right now? And so I think to get sustainability, you really need to have that relationship and that understanding. And I think that the partner needs to realize they have the agency and actually the responsibility to figure out the sustainability along with us.
My name is Umbrani Mudau, and I'm the Chief Executive Officer of the South African National Space Agency. As the South African National Space Agency, we work very closely with the European Space Agency, together with its member states or member agencies. We're seeing this gathering here really as, again, the commitment and the strengthening of the partnership between Europe and Africa in building Earth observation capabilities. And therefore, we believe that we will continue working with Europe, particularly the European Space Agency. But as South Africa, we're also looking at resuscitating bilateral cooperation between South Africa, EU, space dialogue, which is critical for us as South Africa to play this critical role in building capacity across the African continent. Yes, we have over the years really worked with ESA and its member agencies on a number of initiatives and projects. For example, CDEF, which is for engineering facility that we worked with DLR as well, which is critical for the design of future missions. And we believe that we can build on that to bring in the rest of Africa to conduct studies that will look at future joint scientific missions, but also building the industry across the entire continent and also building capacity across Africa in space institutions and the space agencies. And that's one. We've also worked with ESA now on looking at the expansion or the integration of our Space Weather Center. We have a Space Weather Center as our SANSA Space program, which is 24/7 operational and providing all the space weather insights across the African continent. We have been designated by the International Civil Aviation Authority organization to look at providing the aviation industry with space weather information, and that as part of expanding the capability across the African continent, as well as contributing to the global body of knowledge. We want to see that being integrated into the ESA portals. We are also working on SCORE, which is the Space for Climate Observatory with CNES, which is critical for our national adaptation plan. As you know, Africa is being hit hard with extreme events currently. You've seen the flooding. Just this week or last week in South Africa, we've experienced this snowstorm, and therefore that facility becomes very critical in building early warning system, but also ensuring that we do build disaster resilience across South Africa, but also across the region and the African continent. So those are some of the initiatives that we think are critical. We are engaging with ESA on looking at the technical operating agreement for Copernicus data, the Sentinels. Of course, those engagements are ongoing because there are financial implications, but we believe as South Africa, we do have the capacity and the capability to acquire and distribute this data across our footprint in the African region. And we believe those are some of the initiatives that needs to be scaled up or expanded to really build the Earth observation capacity and capabilities in the African continent. Yes, I've mentioned we're collaborating on a number of initiatives, but I think we need to first look at remodeling, the way we finance our projects. As South Africa, we're always ready to co-invest in initiatives that we know that are going to benefit us, that are of interest and building capacity and also transforming the industry. And therefore, we can speak for South Africa, but for the rest of the continent, the African Space Agency is now set up. The African Space Council is in place now. And what we are talking to or engaging with this, the Space Council is to look at playing an advisory role on the direction which the African Space Agency should play. But we also believe that, the national space programs through their national space agencies have a huge role to play in shaping the African EO ecosystem. And therefore, we believe that a robust business-to-business engagement between the Europeans and the Africans is what's going to ensure that there's self-sustenance in the development of the Earth observation capacity and capability in the African continent. And therefore, we believe as a collective, we need to first advance the intra-African collaboration and therefore go as a collective to engage with Europe on how we can build this capacity, on how we can create an environment that's conducive for the development of small, medium enterprises that can engage and work or create businesses across Africa, but also in the European continent, so that they are also self-sustainable and create more job opportunities. As you know, Africa has a number of societal challenges that we're facing, but we believe that Earth observation can play a critical role in addressing those societal challenges.
Hi, my name is Timidayo Niosh, and I'm the Managing Director for Space in Africa. Space in Africa is a market intelligence company with an African office in Lagos, Nigeria, and an European office in Tallinn, Estonia. With the New Space Africa conference, we're able to bring all the new space players across the continent with other stakeholders like the national space agencies, the foreign space agencies, and foreign companies that are interested in exploring business opportunities in Africa. So we've been running this for about 3 years now, and it's been quite very successful. One of the trends that we're seeing in the new space segment in Africa is the fact that we're seeing a growing number of companies being established. We're also seeing a growing number of investment across the industry landscape. Right now, we've got a little over 400 new space companies in Africa, both the upstream and the downstream companies. These companies are obviously set up in different parts of Africa. The upstream companies are, pretty much companies that are, developing and manufacturing small satellite components and selling to a global value chain. And the downstream companies are mostly, geospatial companies or downstream satellite communication company that are also selling the services across multiple countries in Africa. In the last couple of years, we've seen a little over $100 million of investments raised by these companies to facilitate their product development and expand their business offerings across multiple markets. And we're also seeing a growing number of companies collaborating with different government institutions and and even foreign companies to expand their operations. A few of these companies are also able to expand their operations beyond Africa, setting up offices in Europe, in America, and even in Australia and New Zealand. So the new space ecosystem is growing, and these companies are also contributing immensely to the about $20 billion worth of revenue that the overall African space and satellite industry generates annually. Yeah, obviously, when you look at the African space and satellite industry, the government, the state, they've got a different role to play compared to the private companies. The global space industry today is moving in the direction where, while a lot of financing is coming from the government, a lot of technology development, R&D, and project implementations are done by the private sector. So those are like most of the new space companies. And I think in Africa, we're gradually also tilting in this direction, even though right now a lot of program implementation, technology development, and R&D are still done by the government. But the goal is in order to stimulate a commercial ecosystem and a private industry, it's important for the state to actually take a step backward and allow the new space companies, the private companies, to accelerate technology development and carry out R&D. So the private sector, they've got a very important role to play. One of the challenges that the industry is facing today has to do a little bit with capital. Some African governments are getting to the point where they are not increasing their investment in space technology, which is okay, and this is where the private sector is supposed to come in. But before private investors, VC firms, angel investors, and all of that come into the industry to heavily invest in the industry, the state needs to take a step backward, sort of like guide the entire industry, set up the right policy and all of that. But actual technology development, project implementations, research and development need to be done by the private sector. The way that should be done is where each of the stakeholders understand the role they have to play in the industry. The states understand that, their role is to set up a conducive environment for the private sector to thrive, set up the right policies, and provide some necessary government incentives that will accelerate private sector growth. The companies understand that it is their responsibility to carry out research and development and build technologies that can actually scale even beyond the African market. The foreign players, both the foreign government like ESA, for example, they understand that their role is to provide support that can accelerate ecosystem development. And the foreign companies, like European companies that are interested in doing business in Africa, they understand their role is to actually explore business opportunities, not doing that directly, or not always doing that directly, but finding a way to work with local companies in order to explore different kind of opportunities in the industry. And the investors understand that their role is to look at the long-term approach to the ecosystem and invest for an extended period of time before they can get decent return. So it's important for all of the different players to understand the role that they play, and with this effective partnership would eventually drive the ecosystem growth.
My name is Sheikh Bo. I am the Director General of Centre de Suivi Écologique, the Ecological Monitoring Center in French. We're based in Dakar. We work in West Africa. CSC is looking at any information that transforms lives and livelihood, that creates social transformation for communities which are poor, which are vulnerable, which are exposed to climate change and many threats and land degradation. Applying remote sensing for the sake of generating knowledge that are relevant to communities to transform their lives and livelihood is the first option and the last resort of our ecological monitoring center activities in West Africa. So what we are trying to do is to link the pixel to the social transformation, to link the satellite data to the need of social development in our communities. So what we are trying to do is to create any sort of knowledge, indicators, and processes in land dynamics that can fit into policies that help communities improve their food security, improve water supply, improve soil land degradation management in a daily basis. So we are in an operational mode. It's not doing research for the sake of doing research and publishing papers. We're doing research for the sake of creating the transformative momentum that is required in our national policies in local level. We are living in West Africa what I call many accelerations: demographic acceleration, economic growth acceleration, land degradation acceleration, and protracted climate change and risk and damages on communities. So to manage all those processes, which are fast-changing processes, you need a record of data which catch up with the knowledge requirement on each of those rapidly changing parameters. And remote sensing is one of the only source of information that can give you minute-based data, daily-based data, and monthly-based data. So we need to really have a timely, real-time delivery of information in each of the parameters that influence the life of people on the ground. So what we're doing in Earth observation is to try to have the tools and framework to manage big data, to process complex data, and to deliver simple information for people to use for humanitarian and for responding to their daily livelihood. If you talk about the coastal erosion, which is very quickly changing, we have tools that monitor coastal erosion and all the implications of that on land processes, on fisheries, and the people who are living on those resources. If you go in the mainland, water resources and the water cycle is rapidly changing because of climate change. With agriculture, we need also to have rapid information delivery package for communities and for the policymakers. And we are in a good position to do that because all our machine learning, all the data which are made available by European Spatial Agency, by NASA and other partners, help us use the machine learning, the Google engine tools, the possibility for complex model applications to deliver specific knowledge, to single out specific solutions for communities and to respond to this continuous threat and risk management. So vulnerability assessment is our core business, whereby we have to evaluate, assess, and give tangible evidence how climate change and other threats influence local communities. And we can only do that by applying Earth observation and all the algorithms and tools that comes with it. To me, the future of application of remote sensing comes with two options. The first option is to increase the ties and relationship with international organizations. GMS in Africa, through European Union and Copernicus, has demonstrated that continent-to-continent relationship can create a big added value through the investment that the European Union has made into GMS. GMS has created a big community in all African region, and this big community is delivering domestic knowledge for local communities to use. So the North-South collaboration, the inter-institutional collaboration is extremely critical. And through this intercontinental relationship, Africa has set what they call African Spatial Agency, which is going to be the custodian of the big collaboration that will be established between Africa and Europe. US is doing the same, and we are open to other collaboration as well through NASA, etc. The second tier, which is to me extremely important, is to build a regional momentum, this bottom-up. The first one is like the top-down thing, where you take the big chunk of research being done in a collaborative manner. But there is a bottom-up approach whereby the domestic knowledge should be created by Africans themselves. So we need a critical mass of people. We need a critical number of programs. And when I say programs, it's regional programs, ambitious in scope and very deep and far-reaching program that the Africans themselves should establish, funded in a combined manner between imported fund and domestic fund to create what you call the memory of achieving things together and doing remote sensing together. As we pursue our mission to be connected to the rest of the world, we have to create another mission which is connecting Africa to itself, connecting people to people and connecting knowledge to knowledge. And that's the only way for me that we should create the transformation that we want for Africa.